Our next guest today, as many of you may know, actually, I work for an organization called Jews for Judaism, and at Jews for Judaism, we are the international educational resource center that educates the Jewish community about cults and missionaries that target the Jewish community for conversion. And in that respect, we thought today it would be very interesting to hear from a gentleman named Ira Michaelson, who is one of my colleagues who actually has recently become the outreach coordinator at Jews for Judaism on the East Coast. And Ira has an amazing background story, and we really hope that you benefit from this. So, Ira, are you there? Ira, you're not there. So, okay, Ira's going to be joining us shortly, so I'm going to tell you who's next. So after Ira, we're also going to be talking to Avraham Leibler from Israel, specifically from Jewish Israel, and explain to us what's going on. One of the things we have found at Jews for Judaism here in America, we have a very different aspect of targeting and missionizing to the Jewish community than it seems to be in Israel. So first we're going to really explore the North American scene with the missionaries and what's happening. And for that, we have Ira here. So Ira, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you this morning, Ruth?
Good. How's the weather down there in Florida?
It's actually very cold.
It is? What is very cold for a Floridian?
I'm going to tell you how cold it was. When I went out this morning, there was frost on my windshield when I turned the windshield wipers on.
Oh, wow. That must be a unique experience for you all. So,
it was 39 degrees overnight here.
No, that really is cold. So good. So hopefully your blood is pumping and you're ready to talk to our audience here on Shalom USA. So, Ira, you have an amazing story, and I wanted to ask you. It's my understanding that you were raised in an Orthodox home and a Shabbat-observing home. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, we had a lot of influence from grandparents, you know, that were Orthodox, and my parents, you know, wanted to make sure that I got a good Jewish education, and I had a rabbi who was, you know, really strong in bringing children and families into Yiddishkeit.
What community were you raised in New York?
The actual community is in Brooklyn, in East New York, but the shul was B'nai Yisrael.
So you grew up in the heart of world Jewry, basically, you know, outside of Israel. You grew up in Brooklyn. You were raised within the Orthodox community, and something went wrong. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, and it always becomes a question of whose fault it is, and you know, obviously, you know, when you're a kid, you want to blame everybody else, you know, and as you get an adult, as you become an adult, you realize that people back then were much smarter than you were, you know. So for me, it really became an issue that I had personally with my rabbi, who had taken me under his wing, and I was like a son to him at the time, and for whatever reason, I got hurt. And I never really saw Judaism. I loved Yiddishkeit. I never really saw Judaism as a religion of rules and regulations until, you know, I hit kind of a wall with that. I actually, an incident happened where I got hurt, and then shortly after that I broke my leg and I was in the hospital. And what I remember is my rabbi and my teacher, who I used to study Gemara with, came to the hospital to visit me. And they brought tefillin and a talis, and it seemed like it was more important that, you know, I follow the mitzvos than it was how I was, you know, how I was doing with my broken leg. And it was just kind of a snowball effect between, you know, the personal issue I had, and then that, you know, became more of a rules and regulations thing to me, and it was like, where was the love?
It's an interesting statement, where was the love? You know, we hear that at Jews for Judaism over and over again. Individuals. We'll be right back shortly. No. So we hear this all the time at Jews for Judaism, and many of the individuals that leave Judaism and find happiness in another religious faith system often, you know, say that they didn't feel love, they didn't feel appreciation. They actually were turned off by many of the rabbis and leaders in the Jewish community.
This is WQLL, Pikesville, Baltimore, Q1370, Baltimore's greatest hits.
For a fast, accurate temperature reading, nothing beats the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer. Here's what a real Exergen customer had to say.
This works great. My doctor's office uses the same brand and recommended this one to me. I love that I can check my baby's temperature when sleeping because he stays asleep.
The Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer is backed by over 50 published medical studies, more than any other thermometer, and is used and recommended by more medical professionals everywhere, giving you the peace of mind that you're getting the best. The Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer.
The Build a Better Bath event is now at the Home Depot. So let's flush the old toilet and replace it with the new American Standard Champion Elongated Toilet. Higher performance means more powerful flushes. It doesn't take a back seat to anyone. And right now, it's only $199, a savings of $39. Let's do this at the Build a Better Bath event going on now. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. U.S. only while supplies last.
Because Wendy switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on car insurance, her vacation savings jar wants to pat her on the back. But it can't. It's a vacation savings jar. It doesn't have a palm to pat with. Even if it tried, it'd just spill change everywhere and make a mess. Switch to Geico, and every time you see the extra cash, you'll know your vacation savings jar wants to pat you on the back. But remember, it can't. It's a jar. It is, however, happy that you're saving money.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
For a fast, accurate temperature reading, nothing beats the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer. Here's what a real Exergen customer had to say.
This works great. My doctor's office uses the same brand and recommended this one to me. I love that I can check my baby's temperature when sleeping because he stays asleep.
The Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer is backed by over 50 published medical studies, more than any other thermometer, and is used and recommended by more medical professionals everywhere, giving you the peace of mind that you're getting the best. The Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer.
You're listening to the #1 Jewish talk show in the region, Shalom USA, brought to you by Tudor Heights, Baltimore's first choice for kosher senior living. 410-318-8000. Now, back to Jay.
Hi, well, it's actually back to Ruth, and I apologize about that. You know, it has been 22 years since I've hosted a radio show, so I kind of forgot about some of these regulations and having commercials and that. So anyway, sorry, and welcome back to Shalom USA. Ira, back to you. Okay, so, you know, we were talking about the fact that sometimes people at certain points in their life are turned off to Judaism, perhaps because of a misconstrued saying or comment, something that a rabbi or a leader might have said, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear this all the time, as do you.
You know, and it's interesting because many times we try to speak to the leadership in the community and we share some of this. And, you know, I would say some people don't, you know, there's like a denial. People are saying, well, you know, we're doing the best that we can. And you know what? The reality is we all are doing the best we can. But sometimes we have to put down our guard and we just have to be people and we have to look at that person who's in pain or has come to us and not look at them as rabbis or as teachers or educators, but, you know, look at them, look at their soul and say, like, what's wrong? What's hurting? And, you know, I know you were certainly at a very vulnerable age. What were you, like 16 years old when this happened?
Actually, a little bit younger than that. I was somewhere around 14 or 15 when this happened.
So, you know, and as teenagers, adolescent anyway, we're so vulnerable. We're like gaping wounds at times. People don't even like to admit it. You know, we put our external look is like, oh, we're tough and we're cool and everything. But the reality is, you know, when you're 14, 15, 16, we're really looking for unconditional love. We're looking for acceptance. And, you know, whether it's from our friends, our family, our teachers. And if we're not going to get it within the community or within our own homes, we're going to seek it elsewhere. So it sounds like you went out of the Jewish community at that point and you started to look elsewhere. So tell us more about your seeking, your search.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that it's not limited to just 14, 15, 16-year-olds. You know, we see adults that are still seeking unconditional love, and, you know, they're just as vulnerable. We innately, as human beings, want to feel accepted. We want to feel like we belong somewhere. And it's like you said, if the community that we're in doesn't make us feel like we're accepted and loved, we're going to go, you know, where that happens. So when I walked away, really I stayed away from anything organized for quite a number of years. I mean, really up until my late 20s, early 30s. And, you know, went out and, you know, to a certain extent, we're insulated within an Orthodox community. And, you stay amongst your own people. You're with your own friends, other, Orthodox kids. You go on field trips. You do different things. You really don't know what's out there. And then you have this whole world opened up to you. And, so I got involved in a lot of different things. I got involved in drugs. I got involved, with alcohol and so forth. And it wasn't until I feel like I wasn't one of those people that really hit bottom. It was really, I was quite successful, but there was still an emptiness in me. And for me, the missionary thing wasn't, where anybody sought after me and, caught up with me or tried to, talk me into anything. It really had to do with a girl. It had to do with a girl that I met and I invited to come visit me in Florida. And she came down and, very wisely said, would you come to this meeting with me on Sunday? And I'm like, well, what kind of meeting is it? And she goes, oh, it's a fellowship. And I thought to myself, now I realize, the type of verbiage that's used, a fellowship, it's a very benign way of saying she wanted me to go to a church with her. And, we went there, and I was very upset because we couldn't find a place. And then we're driving up the driveway, and there's this huge cross. And, you grow up Jewish, you see a huge cross on top of a building, and it's, what kind of fellowship is this? But it was very strange. I walked into the place, and, they're playing music that sounds very Jewish, and, the pastor gets up, and he's talking about the love for the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, and people are coming over and hugging me and shaking my hand. And, I shared this when I was up in Toronto last month. When they found out that I was Jewish, it was almost as if Jesus Christ had walked into the church. It was almost a level of worship when they realized that a Jew was there, and this is what happens. Their whole agenda, if you will, is about that, and so there's this incredible excitement when a Jewish person walks into a church or walks into a Hebrew Christian congregation.
I hear that all the time, and it's powerful for an individual who, you can go sometimes to synagogue, any congregation, and no one says hello to you. No one says Shabbat Shalom. No one says, please come sit in my chair, And here you go into many of these Hebrew Christian groups or churches, and you're love bombed. And you bring up a very interesting point, Ira, about the friendship evangelism. At Jews for Judaism, we many times get calls by parents or even students at college campuses, and they'll say, oh, you know what? The Jews for Jesus or Chosen People Ministry or Jewish Voice, they have a table outside the Jewish student, and they're giving out, whether it's cookies or latkes, or they're giving out brochures, oh my gosh, they're here to convert us. And they call and they're upset. And, the reality is we say, especially to the parents, I'm not worried about the table. It's not the table out there, because clearly it's marked. They're wearing T-shirts. They're showing that they're Hebrew Christians. They're Jews for Jesus, whatever terminology you want to use. Those are the ones we're least worried about, because the average American Jewish kid knows right away that, these are really people who are trying to convert me to Christianity, so they'll stay away. It's the friendship evangelism. It's the one-on-one. It's the roommate. It's the college professor. It's your colleague at work. It's that just becoming friends, going out, having coffee, the individual that cultivates you and makes you their friend, and then slowly starts bringing you into their congregation or taking you to a Hebrew Christian Shabbat or to the rabbi's house, quote unquote. And we're finding more and more it's truly that. And there's no way of protecting ourselves from that, because that's very subtle, and it's really just all about becoming friends. And you're sharing that now. And, and another part is the male-female component. We hear all the time that, certainly in colleges, that it's a young lady coming on to a young man, or a man to a lady. And on some level, that's a bit of recruitment. There's no question that certain denominational churches and congregations encourage their young adults to reach out to others of the opposite sex, pick them up, bring them over, bring them to our congregation or to Shabbat. What's interesting that you're saying, though, is that the congregation you went to had a huge cross. We usually find that in the Hebrew Christian movement, for sure. They are totally void of crosses or any kind of Christian themes in the congregation. If anything, many of the Hebrew Christian congregations today have, the Aron HaKodesh, they have the Torah, they have Magen David, it's all over the place. Are you seeing that switch over the past 10 years from more Christian themology to Jewish themes?
Well, so here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is that if you really check the statistics, Jewish people who have left Judaism, who now believe, or, whatever form of Christianity it is, there are far more Jews in evangelical churches than there are in Hebrew Christian congregations, or what, in quotations, what people call Messianic Judaism. You go to any Messianic Jewish congregation today, and really legitimately, and I'm not talking about the person who tried to shake their family tree hard enough until a Jew fell out, because we see that all the time, in those groups. I'm talking about finding a legitimately, halakhically Jewish person is near impossible. Most of the leaders, if they're Jewish, grew up in secular Jewish homes or Reformed Jewish homes. They intermarried, so, their children are not halakhically Jewish. At best, you're talking, at best, 10%. On the high end, 20% Jewish people in these Hebrew Christian congregations. They're almost entirely Gentile. They're Gentiles who have come out of the church that, exploring Hebrew roots, and they get attached to this kind of, Jewish sounding music and, all the trappings and so forth. But the big issue is, like me, going into that place was really that most of the Jewish people that we have today are in evangelical churches, believe it or not.
I hear that. And actually, obviously, at Jews for Judaism, we talk to many people who affiliate with the evangelical movement. Yet what has changed, certainly in the 30 years that Jews for Judaism has been in existence, is historically Jews that went straight into a Christian denomination, they ended up calling themselves Christians. They didn't call themselves fulfilled Jews or completed Jews. And now we're finding even those that attend Sunday worship services, they are still saying that they are completed Jews. So they may be in the church, but they are known as Jews, and they are known as Jewish believers. And that's definitely a generational change. And I would say kind of scary, because, look, if somebody calls themselves a Christian, you're a Christian. Whether you were born Jewish or Gentile doesn't matter. If you're a Christian at this moment in your life, you're a Christian. But those Jews who continue to call themselves Jewish or fulfilled Jews or completed Jews, those are the ones we have to worry about. And you actually brought up another point. We do know that when we monitor the over 400 Hebrew Christian congregations in America, that the majority are Gentile by birth. Yet what we're finding is a trend that what we call the wannabe Jews. We are dealing with a lot of the second and now almost third generation of Hebrew Christians that are being raised, and the kids themselves they say, "Hi, I'm a Jew." They don't know any parameters in terms of whether they are truly Jewish or not, whether by mother or father side. They're being raised as, quote, Messianic Jews. And when they go off to college, we have had numerous conversations with individuals who said, I'm a Jew, but yet they're not at all. They're wannabe Jews. So they're self-identifying as Jews. And I think the Jewish community, we at large, need to really look at this, because it's going to really affect the next generation. It's going to affect marriages. It's going to affect families, because if you sincerely believe, these young Hebrew Christians are very sincere in their belief, and they sincerely believe they're Jewish, yet they're not Jewish by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure, and the issue becomes, not to really muddy the waters with definitions, but, there's an interesting verse that we read every year, as we get closer to Purim, in the book of Esther, related to, it says, for fear of the Yehudim, many became mityahadim in Hebrew. It's talking about for fear of the Jews, many became, it doesn't say became Jews, and mityahadim is a verb, it almost would mean Jewish in a sense. So, I say that there's really a distinction between somebody who's halachically a Jew and somebody who's Jewish. I didn't like hearing it when I was a Christian. I didn't like the Jewish community telling me I was a Christian, that I wasn't a Jew. But one rabbi that I talked to said to me, look, you were born of a Jewish mother, so you're a Jew, but you're not Jewish. Okay, see, the community decides what Judaism is, what Jewish is. The issue that we have with the group that you're talking about is they're neither. They're not halachically Jewish, and they're not halachically Jews, and they're not Jewish. There's nothing Jewish about them because they don't follow the community. They've separated themselves. And even the person who is, born of a Jewish mother, who is a Jew, once you, look, it's not about trappings. You don't just put a kippah, a yarmulke and a talis on, and suddenly that, you can, worship a false god that Hashem told us we shouldn't do, especially in these Torah portions that we've been reading, the past week, and this week. And suddenly you're a Jew. It doesn't work that way. And this is one of the main issues that we have, as you well know. The main issue is not only the fact that there are so few Jews in Hebrew Christian congregations, but the fact is that even with all the trappings, I can tell you that my experience of all the years that I was involved at a very high level in the MJA, which was the largest Messianic organization in the United States, I can't tell you how many leaders that I met that could barely cut their teeth on Hebrew. So, you have people that have no knowledge whatsoever. They have no experience. They came from, like I said, secular or reformed homes that really don't have Yiddishkeit. The only thing they have is the trappings.
Right. So, Ira, we're going to get back to you in a few minutes. We're going to stop for a song, and
sure.
We will be back shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Time to be a little bit besimcha. Ivdu es Hashem, besimcha bo'u, lefanav v'ranana. Ivdu es Hashem, besimcha bo'u, lefanav v'ranana. Oh, ivdu es Hashem, besimcha bo'u, lefanav v'ranana. Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. Oh, ivdu es Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. Oh, ivdu es Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana. 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 Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, bo lefanav v'ranana.
You're listening to the #1 Jewish talk show in the region, Shalom USA, brought to you by Tudor Heights, Baltimore's first choice for kosher senior living. 410-318-8000. Now, back to Jay.
Hi, and this is Ruth Guggenheim with Jews for Judaism and Shalom USA, and we're back with Ira. Hi, Ira. How are you?
Hi, good.
Good. Right before the song, you were talking about the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America. So I know that there are two main umbrella groups. One is the Messianic Jewish Alliance, and the other is the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. Can you share briefly the distinction between the multiple Hebrew Christian groups? Like, what is it different about each one theologically or ideologically?
I don't know that there really is a difference. It's like, it's like anything else. Christianity in itself, breeds, I don't know if I want to say breeds contempt, but, it's no different than any other system of organizations. And I think the UMJC was just a group that ended up being birthed out of the MJA because you had some people that had difference of opinions. You have to understand something about the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America. It started out as something called the Hebrew Christian Alliance, which is really what they are. It's a Hebrew Christian organization. But you had a group of the young people who are now not so young anymore that are at the top of leadership. They came, to belief in Christianity and Jesus, back in the what they call the Jesus movement, the hippie days back in the 70s. And these young people are the ones that convinced the leadership at the time to change the name. They wanted to have, more of the Jewish-sounding name and changing it to Messianic Jewish Alliance of America. But if you know the history of it, the history of the Chernoffs, for instance, they came out of the Baptist movement, plain, straight-out Baptists. And if you go there today, there's no difference. They have a very kind of Baptist theology with the Jewish trappings. And I think what happened was with the UMJC, might have had an issue with that and kind of went their own way. I know there's been some reconciliation over the years between those two groups. But the issue that we're having now is that now you have all kinds of splinter groups and fringe groups that have come up, which really are much more insidious. Because in a way, the MJA and the UMJC, if you look at their statement of faith, it's pretty straight out. I mean, it looks no different than most churches, even though they wear the kippah and the talis and each have the aron and so forth. It's these other groups now, and like you talked about, these young people that are, talking about them being Jewish. You have the Hebrew Roots movement, you have the Messianic Israel Alliance, these two-house movement or Ephraimite movement and everything else where they think that they're the lost 10 tribes. These are the Nazarene Judaism, things like that, the fringe groups that are trying to keep Torah, that are saying they're Torah keepers and so forth, that are as much an issue, if not a bigger issue, because they're becoming much more relevant now
Do you think
to people.
Are they consciously trying to blur the lines between the two faiths as a way of just ensnaring Jews, or do you believe that there's really something more spiritually intended here?
Look, I used to say that they're not. There's two groups here. There are people who sometimes you have to recognize that these are people who passionately believe what they believe, and they passionately believe that for the end times for them, for the Messianic age to appear, requires the Jewish people come to faith in Jesus. Okay? That's the one group. On the other hand, there's the group that believes that too, but what's mixed in is, an agenda. You mentioned before targeting, like in colleges, the vulnerable. And that's important to recognize because there is a component here like Amalek, that targeted the vulnerable. I mean, they specifically know who that lonely kid is. They specifically know who that lonely person is that walks in someplace. So when we talk about that friendship evangelism, we have two types of people there. And the bottom line is that the agenda doesn't change because at the end of the day, when you look at their Greek Testament, Romans 11, which is what they heavily rely upon, talks about the fact that in order for the end times to come, in order for their false Messiah to return, requires we as Jews to come to faith.
Ira, you're bringing up a very important statement right there, the Messiah. I know that a lot of Hebrew Christians use the terminology to Jews that this is the Jewish Messiah, that Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, is the Jewish Mashiach, and all we want you to do is believe in your Mashiach. Right. And a unique thing is that a lot of Jews, especially the uneducated Jew, they think, there's obviously nothing wrong in believing in Mashiachs. We've had potential Mashiachs in every generation, but there is a unique distinction between the Jewish concept of Mashiach, which is totally human and is a leader that will lead us back to Israel and the rebuilding of the temple, but 100% human, 100% from the lineage of David HaMelech, versus the Christian concept of Messiah, which is a divine individual that became God. Did you see that? Did you ever have, even you as a Jew going into Christianity at a time, did you struggle with that, or did you just accept it?
So for me, it was a little bit different because of my background, coming out of Orthodox Judaism. I had to make sense of things more from our own texts. So I would lean heavily on Kabbalistic text, in the Sephirot and, the idea of Keter and Chokhmah and Binah, the three top Sephirot. I could try to make sense of things through, Kabbalistic writings because I never got the whole God thing. And that when you really become intellectually honest and you become a critical thinker, which really doesn't exist in Christianity because it's all based on blind faith. You just believe. There's no critical thought involved. You just have to have blind faith and believe. So for me, this concept of Mashiach, I don't think enough is, I think part of the problem is, in Orthodox education is there's not enough focus spent on the Navi. And when there's not enough focus spent on the Navi, it's very easy to not have answers to questions. This is why we know that some of the groups now that are out there, like we have in Brooklyn, that are targeting, that do these Isaiah 53 campaigns and do these different campaigns, they know that the people that they're talking to, they realize that Orthodox yeshiva bacher doesn't study the Navi. That he's not going to have a ready answer for Yeshaya 53, and what it's talking about.
Definitely. So would you encourage that the day school system and certainly the yeshivas do more Tanakh-based, the actual Peshat from the Bible, from the Navis and the writings?
Yeah, there's no question that has to be an important component going forward, because when you consider the amount of money that's being spent, in order to convert Jews to Christianity, as opposed to what we're doing, in the counter-missionary community, and how little we work with, in funding, something has to be done. And since it's not a funding aspect, then it has to be an educational aspect. And the educational aspect has to start in the Jewish day school, in the yeshivot, and so forth, teaching the children, teaching the young adults to have an answer when they're confronted with these things. Right now, they don't have that.
You're true, and it's interesting. Even adults, I speak to 40, 50, 60-year-old individuals that really have very limited knowledge about Tanakh, about the Bible base. And one of the things we say when we go and we speak to different groups, it's a personal decision whether or not they believe that the Torah is God-given. Of course, we believe it is God-given, but if you don't, you still have to have the confidence in the knowledge base that for thousands of years, we, the people of the book, and this is what kept us united. One of the reasons that Judaism survived all these years is because we knew what the basic tenets of Judaism are. And today's young adults or adults, no one really knows it. When you mention with yeshivas, I'll never forget, we did a town hall meeting a couple of years ago. It was like 2006. The group Jews for Jesus was coming to Baltimore, and 400 people packed the JCC, and we're doing a program and talking about it. And there were some guys from the local yeshiva who were there and figured, we would be able to answer anything. Hours and hours, they were standing in the parking lot with some of the missionaries that attended, and they were shocked that they could not, off the top of their head, give back verse for verse of whether it was Isaiah, Daniel, Zechariah, Ezekiel. They just simply couldn't do it. And the next day, two of the yeshiva guys called my predecessor, Scott, at the time, and said, you know what, we're so embarrassed. We may know Gemara left and right, but we couldn't answer this. We're going to make a commitment to start studying from this day forward the Nevi'im, the prophets. So I think your point is really well taken. We only have a few minutes more, but I did want to talk about, you brought up the idea that even Gentiles are sometimes seen or falling out of faith in the Christian world. They are starting to use their critical thinking skills. And for them, if they start reading the New Testament and then the Hebrew scriptures, the Tanakh, they start seeing discrepancies. And it opens their eyes to challenges. And I know at Jews for Judaism, we certainly have spoken to numerous non-Jews who become Noahides or B'nai Noach. Can you address that for a few minutes, what that movement is?
So, we're dealing, this is a major scale. There's a paradigm shift going on. I've talked to people like Rabbi Michael Skobach, Rabbi Tovia Singer, many of the leaders in our community, our counter-missionary community, and we're being inundated on a daily basis. I know for a fact that there are people that follow me with my radio show as well that are listening to this interview as well. And the majority of them are the people that you're talking about. These are people who were raised in Christianity or left Christianity and were Hebrew Christian congregations or Hebrew roots congregations that have left idolatry, that have given up belief in Jesus, and now they're trying to find a home. And this is another issue that's going to need to be addressed by Judaism, because the B'nai Noach movement, this idea of the Sheva Mitzvot, the 7 mitzvot, is fine, but we have this group of people that are now saying, well, what do I do? I've been in a Hebrew Christian congregation. I thought I was keeping Torah. I thought I was keeping Shabbos. I thought I was keeping kashrut. And now we're saying, the Jewish community is saying to us, no, that's not for you. Mm-hmm. So we have to have an answer, but of course, I always believe that the B'nai Noach movement, this idea of the Sheva Mitzvot, is a starting point. It's a starting point to bring these people into, and for us to have an ability to be what we were called to be. We read in these Torah portions that we're reading now about the idea of what we are. We're an Am Segula, we're a treasured people or a chosen people, but we're also called to be a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. We're called to be a nation of priests and a holy nation. And I think as a nation of priests, we're meant to be a nation of priests to the world, not just to the Jewish community. And so we have an opportunity now to kind of draw these people in and to figure out how we're going to bring them in, because I can tell you that they are going to be the best people for us in countering this whole thing, because they are the ones that stood in the parking lot those days for hours that had answers. And now they know the truth. They're going to be the ones that are going to be the greatest asset to the Jewish community in keeping Jews Jewish.
Well, Ira, I'll tell you one thing. You are truly a great asset to Jews for Judaism and the Jewish community. We welcome you back with our open arms and hearts back to Judaism, you and Lori, and thank you for all your help. We're going to actually now stop and take a little break and have some music from Israel before we have our next guest, Avraham Leibler. Thank you.
For the photography at Shalom USA's Gala Dinner, we picked Israel Orange, and are we glad we did. In a friendly and unobtrusive way, Israel made everyone feel comfortable, and he captured all of the moments that made the evening special. The proof was in the proofs. The disc of photos we received from Israel, by the way, just a few weeks after the dinner, were crisp, colorful, and beautiful. So for your next simcha or special occasion, trust your photos to a true professional. Call Israel Orange 443-415-3555. Israel specializes in weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, and single and family portraits. When you think photography, think orange. Israel Orange, 443-415-3555, or on the web at www.israelorange.com. Did you know that there's a great new place in town to hold your next simcha or event? Moses Montefiore Anshe Emunah has completely refurbished and expanded its banquet hall, and it looks fantastic. Shalom USA held its gala dinner there in July, and it was a great choice. Spacious, beautifully appointed, plenty of parking, and very affordable. And the folks at Moses Montefiore are so easy to deal with. So when planning your next personal simcha or organizational event, do yourself a favor and book the best location in Baltimore. Moses Montefiore Anshe Emunah, conveniently located at 7000 Rockland Hills Drive. Their number, 410-653-7485 or 410-653-SHUL.
You're listening to the number one Jewish talk show in the region, Shalom USA, brought to you by Tudor Heights, Baltimore's first choice for kosher senior living. 410-318-8000. Now, back to Jay.
Hi, and this is Ruth Guggenheim again with Shalom USA, and talking to you now with Avraham Leibler from Jewish Israel in Israel. Avraham, are you there?
Good morning, Ruthie. Shavua Tov to you and to the audience from Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh.
Amen. Okay, so Avraham, you have been involved with Jewish Israel for quite some time, and I know we at Jews for Judaism in America use the research and the content material that Jewish Israel has been putting out for a number of years now. And, you know, what we know is that the American Jewish community looks at the Hebrew Christian agenda and Christian Zionism very, very different than those of you in Israel. And I was wondering if you could share, number one, what Jewish Israel has found out, and tell us more about the organization.
Jewish Israel was founded in 2008. My wife and I and our research director, Ellen Horowitz, were essentially founders of the organization, along with others. Today we have a board of approximately half a dozen people, including Rav Shalom Gold of Har Nof, formerly the Rav of the Young Israel in West Hempstead, Long Island. We all came to found this organization because of personal experiences we had in discovering in various different ways to what extent there was, I would say there is an infiltration of Christian influence here in Israel in all aspects of life, which endangers the Jewishness of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael.
So, you know, I'm curious, do you find from yourself, you know, in Sefer Bereshit, in the book of Genesis, I know a lot of the Christian Zionists who truly act as though they love Israel, and I don't question that they do, such as Kufi and that. They used constantly the pasuk that, he who blesses Israel will be blessed. Do you think that is truly their goal, is just to bless us?
Yes and no. First of all, when a Christian reads from our Torah, he reads it as part of he or she reads it as part of their Bible. When they bless us, the biggest way they think they can bless us is by bringing us to their God, to Jesus. Therefore, anything they do that softens us up, what's known as, I was listening to Ira beforehand, I don't recall if he used the word witnessing. For our audience who doesn't realize it, witnessing is basically acting in such a way as to make Christianity appealing to whoever is listening, even if they're not directly talking about Christianity. Even doing good deeds without referencing Christianity is something that is witnessing to other people to draw them either to Christianity or to make them more appreciative of Christianity or Christians who observe Christianity. So when they say that they believe in the verse that says that when Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, I will bless those that bless you, at the bottom of the line over there, as much as they're sure that even whether they succeed or don't succeed in convincing us of their beliefs, at the end of the day, they're going to be blessed for it. Our view, on the contrary, is that we view the verse in Breshit that people who respect our Judaism and are not looking to deceivingly convert us to other beliefs which Hashem has forbidden to us, which Hashem tells us to stay far away from and to not tolerate within the Jewish community, those kind of people, such as true Bnei Noach, those are people who will be blessed by Hashem. I'm not here to say that Hashem will not bless many, many Christians who are do it very honestly, without any intent whatsoever to influence us in any way. There are certainly people out there who take the verses as such and aren't diligent in their Christianity as such. However, the moment that you talk about an evangelical, if he's an observant evangelical, the word evangelical means to be a bearer of the good, so-called good message, which is the message of the Christian gospel. So if they're bearing that message, then they're doing it in everything that they do. So when they're being friendly to us and when they're supposedly blessing us, they have an ulterior motive, which is against Judaism, and it's something that we have to be aware of, and it has effects on us as far as how we should respond to that.
So, in North America, there seems to be a natural barrier. Most Jewish communities, once they are targeted by various Hebrew Christian congregations, whether it's mailings that they get, whether it's door-to-door solicitations, phone calls, packages, there's a natural barrier, whether you're a secular Jew or an observant Jew. You know that this is a Christian missionary and they're out to potentially convert us. Yet from what I'm seeing in Israel, with so many groups now setting up shop, if you will, like for instance what's going on in Yehuda and Shomron and everything, it seems like so many of these evangelical groups that support proselytizing of Jews are able to literally just move in and set up shop. Can you share that? And it's like that the Israeli citizens don't even see that they need to have some kind of protection.
I'm trying not to be accusative of my fellow brothers and sisters here in Eretz Yisrael, but there is definitely a problem here, and unfortunately, JewishIsrael.com has stated over and over again that we believe that Jewish organizations, very religious Jewish organizations and individuals, community leaders, and even rabbis in Israel are making a terrible mistake in assuming that the types of relationships and friendships which they are building together with Christian supporters of Israel who call themselves Christian Zionists, there is a price to be paid. The price is being paid by giving an immense amount of enthusiasm to both the evangelical community and what Ira already described as the Messianic Christian community. They are not Jewish. I don't like to call them Messianic Jewish. They are Messianic Christian community. And the amount of monies that are funneled as a result of the success of influencing the Jews here on one end, religious Jews here. I need to stress this over and over again to the audience here and to people who come to our site. We do not see Christians missionizing Jews in Yehuda and Shomron. There might be cases, that's for sure, but the vast majority of the cases are not them. In fact, on your own comments beforehand, that the communities, whether they're in the United States, whether they're secular or religious, when they get mailings in the mail, they're aware that these are Christian missionaries. Here, even in the States, very often, and most of the time, the Jews that missionaries are hooking, because they like to call it fishing, and that they're picking up are the weaker ones in the communities. They are the possibly materially destitute or emotionally distraught or have some other heavy baggage that they're carrying, which might lead them to run away from their origins or be totally ignorant of their origins in the first place, and to accept what they hear about Christianity versus what Judaism says about Christianity. Here we have the same issue as well. The targets here in Israel are, for example, Russian families, where very often there is a mixture of Jewish or non-Jewish. There's a problem with the Ethiopian Olim who come in, where there's also such a mixture, and there's just very simply Ethiopians who are absolutely Jewish without question, who are very weak in their Judaism. There are people who are poor. There are people who are emotionally distressed. These are the easy targets, the easy pickings, and that's why most of the time you do not hear of a tremendous influx of new Christian believers from Judaism who know where they're coming from vis-a-vis their Jewish history and their Jewish philosophy and jump into Christianity.
Yet you see a growing number of Hebrew Christian congregations there, don't you?
We're at the point in Israel already. It started off with a trickle that Ben-Gurion, at the founding of the state, allowed to stay because, after all, Israel calls itself a democratic country, and it's democratic even when it goes against the grain of what's good for Jews in what's supposed to be the Jewish land. Those individuals turned into communities, and they had children, and already their children are having children. And these Messianic Christians can be found in the school system, in the army, in the universities, in law offices, which is a problem on its own, in the government, and in businesses throughout the country. They are citizens of the country. According to previous reports, which Yad L'Achim reported, for example, there are approximately 180 to 200 such congregations throughout Israel, from Metula in the north down to Eilat in the south, and everywhere from Tel Aviv down to the Jordan Valley. And there are approximately 20,000 members to these congregations, and they're constantly growing, especially since the families in several generations are already rooted here. They speak fluent Hebrew. They look and act like Jews. They look and act like Israelis as well. I even want to strengthen what Ira said beforehand, where Christians are not only calling themselves complete Jews, that's both here and abroad. You will even find Christians calling themselves, quote unquote, Torah observant Jews. They're doing everything they can to literally lie and to remove all of the lines of distinction, the most elementary lines of distinction between Jewish terminology and Christian terminology.
Right. You know, we see that, and we've certainly talked to quite a few individuals that are from Eretz Yisrael that, they have the beards, kippot. I would think some of them are, one of them I recently spoke to looked just like a Breslov. So it's really hard to distinguish that. When we speak here in America to various groups and audiences, it always comes up that they say, well, in Israel, I thought there are laws against missionizing and proselytizing. How can these people be, given these rights? How can they be setting up such organizations and congregations, and how can they be giving Oleh rights? And I think that's an excellent question, because we perceive that the government has set up safeguards where they really haven't. And, just one last thing before you respond. We're aware of the Jerusalem Institute of Justice that constantly puts out press releases and articles about the persecution of Hebrew Christians in Israel. And that raises a lot of Christian money here out of America.
Correct. I'll take on 2 points that you mentioned. One is, let's be very clear. There is an anti-missionary law in Israel. It forbids specifically only 2 things. One is you're not allowed to missionize by offering material benefits in order for somebody to convert. In other words, to convince somebody by giving them either money or clothing or food or housing if they will convert. That's one thing that's forbidden. The other thing that is forbidden is you are not allowed to solicit a minor to missionize them. Other than that, there is a total lack of limitation on any Christian missionary activity within Israel, and that's the way it's been for many years, for decades already, and it's very unfortunate.
So also,
the other issue is you mentioned the Jerusalem Institute of Justice and Kalev Myers, and they're promoting the suffering, quote unquote, suffering of the Christian community in Israel and the Messianic community in Israel. I have 2 comments to make on that. One is I recently attended a lecture here a short while ago from our fellow colleague Rabbi Tovia Singer, and he mentioned that when missionaries go back to the States and they go to evangelical churches and ministries and gatherings, and they tell them about the suffering Christians here, there is no bigger generator of anti-Semitism than the Christians themselves hearing the stories of their fellow Christians suffering like Jesus suffered from the Jews, so supposedly 2,000 years ago. So people like Kalev Myers and his institute and people who do similar activities, if and when they do such things back in the States, they are one of the biggest promoters of anti-Semitism, as I've heard it from Rabbi Tovia Singer, and it makes sense. The other thing that I want to mention about Kalev Myers, who is a missionary, his father runs a ministry, and as far as I know, a congregation here in downtown Jerusalem. The other thing that they do is that they use Israel's secular democratic laws in order to benefit for themselves. And I'll give an example of that. The Jerusalem Institute of Justice promotes secular marriage in Israel. Now, why is that important for them? Because the moment you say that marriage of Jews does not have to be based on Jewish law anymore in Israel, then it's legitimate in the eyes of the Israeli government for Christian, Messianic Christians to get married in Israel, whether they're Jewish or they're not Jewish, etc. And that opens the doors for them. The same Jerusalem Institute of Justice, and I am taking a calculated guess here, if you ask them to support, heaven forbid, support homosexual marriage in Israel, I would assume that because of their religious Christian background and upbringing, that they would not take into consideration. And in fact, we have not seen them promoting that specifically, even though so many others are promoting that under the same concept of a democracy for all in Israel. So it's not just promoting, blatantly promoting the benefits to Christians here. It's also in a stealth manner using secular law, attempting to pry open everything they can in order to open the floodgates and let Christians thrive in this country as much as possible.
So, at Jews for Judaism, we're constantly called on about our opinion with CUFI, Christians United for Israel, and groups such as that, and Tom Hagee. And should they accept, some of the American groups are asking, should we be accepting money from these groups? And, we share some of the reports we get from you all. And I was wondering if you could comment on CUFI and the millions and millions of dollars that they actually do raise, in your opinion, about Tom Hagee.
You mean Pastor John Hagee?
Yeah.
We pointed out many years ago that Pastor John Hagee gave his blessings online to the Ma'oz Israel missionary organization, which is most probably one of the biggest Messianic Christian organizations in Israel. His approval of the organization and his support for them, monetary support, included the information itself was taken down and removed from the web pages of the Ma'oz Israel website sometime afterwards, because it pointed out very clearly that Pastor Hagee believes that CUFI can behave in one way. In other words, in CUFI you most probably will not find direct missionizing of Jews. There are other things that you can find there maybe, but you won't find any direct activity of missionizing Jews within CUFI. But the question is, all of these people, all of these very, very observant evangelicals, when they're not in CUFI, they're wearing another hat, and that is the standard evangelical hat. That includes Pastor Hagee himself. So we have to ask Jews honestly, is someone like that a friend or a foe? Or even if they could be a friend, shouldn't we be limiting what we're participating in with them?
Excellent point. Unfortunately, we're only going to have a couple of minutes, so I don't know if you can answer this like in 2 minutes. But I know that even some of the rabbis now are claiming that perhaps this whole movement with the Christian Zionists and the grafting in, that this is a part of our prophecy. This is a part of the future prophecy stated in the Torah, that the two would graft together. Can you, in like 2 minutes, share your thoughts?
Sure. That issue comes up in two particular areas. There are people like Rabbi Eliezer Malamed who have said that Christians working in the vineyards of Yehuda and Shomron are fulfilling prophecy, and I recommend that listeners go to JewishIsrael.com, our website, and look at the articles there referring to recent activities by Rabbi Malamed. We just published such an article last night. But I'd also like to point out that recently, in an article in the forward, the IFCJ Zichiel Eckstein, who is the trailblazer of the money trail, which led to such a blurring of lines between the Jewish faith and the Christian belief, he is quoted as saying that within the next dozen years there will be a recognized religious category between Judaism and Christianity of people who feel Jewish but accept Christian doctrines regarding Jesus' status as the Messiah and the concept of the Holy Trinity, among other Christian ideas. And again, within the 2 minutes that you gave me, we are talking about a terrible blurring of lines here that separate us. And we say, Baruch Hu Elokeinu shevdilanu min hatoim v'natan lanu Torat emet. But the lines are being blurred by certain people, whether they're rabbis or community leaders or organization heads. And we feel that this should be a clarion call for Jewish leaders and Jewish institutions to wake up and to realize that we have to put our feet down. We have to start saying no at some point, no matter how painful it might be for what we view as our material gain. I put my trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu before I put my trust in people who work against the Jewish people.
Well, Avraham, you've certainly given us all here back in America plenty to think about. And, I think as we all move forward in the future, we have to sit down at the same tables. We have to look at what's going on here in America and in Israel. And we as Jews have to stand tall, and we have to start drawing the line in the sand. It sounds like from what you're saying that we're letting other people many times draw that line in the sand. And we, the Jewish community, are not going to the table with strength and dignity and knowledge so that we can, it's okay to have these relationships, and we're meant to have these relationships. Yet we're the people that have to stand tall and proud and know from what God gave gave us and the Torah and Israel what we want and need out of these relationships, not the other way around. So, Avram, thank you so much, and good luck to all of you at Jewish Israel. The work you do is phenomenal, and we daily thank you. So, shalom.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Ruthie. Bye-bye.
Bye. And to all of our listeners out there at Shalom USA, it was a pleasure having you here today. And again, Jay should be back next week, but we thank you very much for joining in at Shalom USA. We wish you a wonderful week, and shalom.